All right, Tony Davis is here. How you doing, Tony?
I'm doing good, man. How you doing?
Doing very good, very good. Thanks for coming on and offering to share your story. You are a CBC journalist. We met a little while ago. We did a story about this podcast about a year ago, and we also kind of just seen each other around the comedy shows and stuff. I think you went up a few times on occasion.
Yeah. Give it a shot.
Maybe, allegedly.
Yeah, I used it to
The
I
myth.
u- I used it so whenever I was getting prepared to do some like on-camera video journalism, to kind of
Ah,
like get the idea of being in front of a camera in front of a crowd. So that's the
interesting.
hardest thing. That's a tough thing to do, man. It's impressive that you get up and do comedy. It was a lot of pressure.
Interesting. Yeah. So, did you think it helped, and what was your experience like?
Yeah, it helped. My experience doing comedy, man, I don't know. I don't think I'll ever do it again. It didn't really give me that like spark that I see it gives, other people like you and some of the other people in the comedy scene on PEI that I've interviewed. I don't know, and I see that
Right.
it helps a lot of you you work through, some mental health stuff, some mental health traumas and things like that. And it's just I don't feel like I get it out maybe the same way, but
Right.
yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's very. Yeah. We're all we're all working through something up there for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of fun. um, but yeah, you we talked a little bit about your story, but you can just jump right into it wherever you like, and we can go from there.
All right. Well, I guess, I kind of want to chat a little bit about, grief, resilience, turning some things into, to positive things, I guess. Um, so I don't even know where to start, really. I grew up on the island, grew up here my whole life. My family's mostly from, Newfoundland and Labrador, so I'm a first generation islander. But anyway, make a long story short, my upbringing wasn't all that terrible, I guess. I would say, I've heard of a lot of people who've had it worse, but my mom had me at a very young age. She was 17, so essentially for a long time I was raised by my grandparents and stuff like that until she kind of took on that responsibility a little bit more in her 20s. Um, but I guess like starting out, some of the things I faced, talking about mental health and talking about trauma in general, is whenever I was younger, my mom and I weren't that connected. She was a victim of domestic violence whenever I was very young, which I think very early shaped my outlook. At one point, I remember one of my earliest memories was somebody had one of her partners at the time or something like that. I'm not sure what the story is behind it. Had broken into my grandparents' house while it was just me and her there. And basically, chased her down the hallway. She hid in the bathroom while this person was outside with me, standing over me while I was kind of, wondering what was going on and stuff like that. So it always created this kind of disconnect between my mom and I. And I think that that really started to come to light and bothered me whenever she did pass. Um, she died due to I guess it was linked to opiate use, drug use, stuff like that.
Right. So, has that been something she was doing like all those years? Like you talked about the boyfriend coming in and like to
Yeah,
rob.
no, she wasn't. She wasn't. She struggled with mental health her whole life, I guess I would say. Um, so she had some anxiety, she had some depression, stuff like that, but she never let any of that kind of turn to addiction. I mean, she drank and stuff like that, but I think at one point, she just had me whenever maybe she couldn't handle the responsibility, and I think that was kind of the disconnect at first. But for a long time there, like we were cool. We were almost partners and helping to raise like my brothers and my sisters. And she did have a husband at one point. He's a great guy. He was a really stable force. In my family. But unfortunately, they split. And I find that's whenever she started to Ended up drinking more, ended up eventually using drugs.
So how old are your siblings? Are they're younger than you?
Yeah, I'm the oldest in my family. Yeah.
And you say like you kind of partnered with you end up kind of partnering with your mom to help raise the siblings in some way, maybe.
Yeah, yeah, to an extent, it's just whenever my mom and my stepdad split, they didn't necessarily have that male figure in the household, and I guess I kind of became that male figure. So the relationships with my brothers and sisters went from being a brother to being more like of an authority figure, being like, this is what you're doing wrong, this is what you should be doing, and obviously it caused a strain on the relationship going on in life.
So that was after like the split,
Yeah, that was after the split. Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then how did that kind of manifest itself like moving forward with your siblings?
Um, I guess it was. I don't know. It just kind of. I guess I'll have to backtrack a little bit just to explain that a little bit more. Um, with my siblings and stuff, I think that we, it wasn't necessarily always a stable household. We were always, going back and forth to my grandparents, and that was due to different things. Whenever I was in grade six, my mini home had a fire. It had, burnt, and the interior had essentially been like completely destroyed by smoke damage, right? So that was a time whenever we actually had to move to my grandparents, and we spent about a year there, while actually, to be honest with you, this has always been a really positive moment in my life, because the community kind of rallied behind us and helped rebuild the whole interior of our home. So it kind of sent home to me the kind of special place PEI is, the people around here, and the support you can get when anything goes wrong. It's really incredible. But anyway, so we were always going back there whenever bad things would happen. So the house would burn down. Then eventually, due to my mom's addiction, she wasn't paying the bills, so we lost that. So then we were going back to my grandparents' house, and living there, and kind of piggybacking off of that. And I just think that whole instability, strained the relationships between my brothers and my sisters, my brother and my sister, and I. Not to say it isn't great now. It's a lot better now, but for a few years there, I think just going through what we went through different kind of scenarios and viewing it differently, didn't allow us to be able to talk about it, on the same terms, I guess.
And how I'm always curious about this because, like as a kid, you almost don't even, you can't really process it like in the way we think about it now as adults, where something happens and you process it, you think about it, you reflect. Um, but what were your sort of thoughts when these things were going on as a child?
It's kind of crazy when I look back at it now, because even like going back to that very early time of where my house had burnt. In school, I wasn't doing well. I was failing spelling tests. They were putting me in classes where I had to do language therapy, stuff like that. They eventually, in junior high, moved me into a modified class with kids who had learning disabilities and things like that. And at the time, I didn't realize, maybe maybe what I was going through, and probably teachers and other people, and I'm sure it's progressed a little bit now. At least I hope it has. But maybe they didn't realize that trauma was affecting me in a way that didn't allow me to learn properly in that window and in that time. And now I look at it, it's like, I mean, that was always in my head. The fact that I had lost a lot of my things, a lot of my stuff, and at an early age, it really put in perspective to me that like anything can kind of vanish in a second. And looking back, that was kind of I kind of built a lot of resentment too, right? Because they had put me in a class where they had said, you're not learning correctly, and didn't really connect it to what I was going through, in terms of, losing a home. Um, so after I got head of that class, I really did rebel. I wasn't the best kid in junior high and high school. I mean, I'm willing to admit that, because I had learned that I can go through things and face certain stresses and still have okay marks. So what was the point of trying to appease people who didn't believe in me in the first place? Is kind of how I felt.
Yeah.
So I think that's how things like that. I mean, I can't speak for anybody, everybody, but that's how that particularly manifested in me, and affected my mental health, I guess, and my ability to learn at that time. And then led into other stuff where you're starting to resent authority figures, because you start to believe that they might not think you can do certain things.
Yeah, and I think it's you start believing like everyone's against you.
Essentially, yeah, right. Like it's a very lonely feeling, and like I said, maybe I didn't feel that necessarily at the time, but reflecting now as an adult, it really did affect me. I even wrote whenever I graduated from Holland College, I spoke for my graduating class, and that was one of the first things that kind of came up, was the fact that sometimes in school, whenever I was dealing with things, I didn't feel like I was being handled correctly with in terms of education and stuff. In fact, I remember going to school, and then I'd come home, and my grandfather would actually teach me everything I had learned in school, but differently. Like he'd just break it down from his perspective. He was always this smart, and like if there's a male figure in my life, it was him. He always had these encyclopedias, and always put an onus on self knowledge and self directed knowledge, and studying yourself, because not everybody learns exactly the same ways.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's very wise. And I think that really is what it comes down to. You know, like there is a huge problem with education, I think, but like it's really just the teacher giving you the information and you have to kind of take it and go with it, right?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes like that gets lost in education. But going back to what you said about like authority figures and stuff, I kind of went through the same thing, and I've like, worked with kids and stuff, and I see it a lot, especially in young boys when they're going through trouble, like at home or in their life, whatever the thing may be. It's like it just becomes like an authoritative thing where they can't sit still, pay attention in class, and then it's like these people are against me and they're just trying to get me to do things that I don't want to do, and it's like the actual problem isn't really being addressed. It's more of just like you're not doing these things, but there's a reason why I'm not doing these things, you know?
Yeah, yeah, and it kind of shifted over time as I grew up, because I feel like some of those things made me grow up a little faster, right? So, like by graduating high school, I respected, all my teachers.
Yeah, yeah,
And but at the same time, that authority thing still ran deep. I think it was 2009 I graduated, and a teacher, Jill, who like really, really believed in me, and like kind of was the first person to really call me out and tell me, I was a good writer, and actually made me believe it.
yeah.
She had gave me a nod to win an award for application of English. So coming from a kid who they had in, a modified class, to kind of getting that award was a huge deal to me. And I respected the hell out of this woman. I still do to this day. She helped me get transcripts to go to journalism school, 4 years ago. But whenever I was graduating, she basically looked me in the eye and told me that was the career path I should follow. And because of the way I had felt about different authority figures, and people giving me advice that I felt was wrong my entire life, I basically was like, well, you know, no, I'm gonna kind of go do what I want, and it kind of led me down this path of, I don't know, self-discovery to an extent.
So she said that you should follow which path or
That I should actually
what?
go and be a journalist, like 10 years before I actually went and became a journalist. But I didn't want to take that advice, because
Yeah,
I
it
was
was,
going through
yeah,
it. Was somebody who I felt was trying to tell me to do something, and my
yeah,
whole life people were telling me to do things, and it didn't pan out the correct ways, you know.
Yeah.
So like
I
I
think
feel
that,
like that resentment for authority was deep, but like
yeah.
you know, I still I respected, you know, those people at that time, but like the past was definitely still weighing on me, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think that is a thing like too where you have to and I'd like to you know, kind of get your story of like what you ended up doing in that time, but like I think we have to get there by ourselves too, though. You know, like someone can
Mm.
say, like, you're really good at this, you should do this. But until you're mentally at the place where like it's like a light bulb, it goes back to the same as the teacher, or like I think about it with coaching. It's like you can just give the information, but you can't force someone to do it or force someone to see. It's just you gotta let the light bulb go off, and then it's like, oh, okay, now I'll go do that.
Yeah, you know, so like, after school, it kind of led to me. I took a year off and, you know, worked at a gas station and, you know, stuff like that. And then eventually I did go to UPEI whenever I met my girlfriend. Well, not met my girlfriend, but started dating my girlfriend, who's now my wife. That kind of led me to be like, oh, okay, you know, somebody who really cares about me. Maybe I should try to, you know, find a career path or do something. So, you know, I went to like English and burnt like, you know, 3 years worth of tuition, kind of messing around, not knowing what I would end up using that for, you know. But yeah, like so that was kind of how it went with me in terms of school. So I was taking English, and like that's kind of whenever things started to get really bad with my mom in terms of drug addiction, and that's kind of why I dropped out of school. So you know, I guess just to fast forward a little, you know, so I was 18 and I was graduating, and the stepdad figure I talked about a little bit earlier, who was kind of, you know, a really good guy. You know, actually, when my mom passed, he let me live in his mini home while he went out west for a while. I moved in with my younger brother. But anyway, can't remember where I was at there, Matty.
Oh, you're just talking about
Okay, yeah, so 18, coming out of high school. Yeah,
yeah.
okay, so I was at UPEI, and that's when things started to get bad with my mom's drug addiction. I started to notice, I guess, and
What were the kind of things you started to notice?
I think it was what I started to notice in my brothers and sisters. Like whenever I'd come home, like it just wasn't quite the same. They seemed a little bit more like timid and stuff. So I started to realize like, okay, there's something weird going on. My mom started to spend more time in like her bedroom. I started to realize like some of the bills were slipping. Like, you know, our electricity bill was slipping. Our rent wasn't getting paid. And it all came to a head when eventually she was kind of like, yeah, so we don't have the money for like, you know, our fees this month, or like, I don't know if it was to cover the bills, the lot fees, whatever it was. And they basically she asked me for, you know, $600 to cover the whole thing, you know, and I had it, but I kind of looked around and like saw these signs, like things were missing from the home, like they were being pawned, like our computer was gone and it was being turned into cash for something, right?
Right.
Um, so anyway, I kind of said, you know what, no, I think, you know, we should probably get out of here. So all of us at the time ended up moving into my grandparents yet again, which was a huge strain on them. You know, my grandfather, he was a firefighter his whole life, transferred here from Newfoundland, and he had cancer whenever he was, you know, 40, in his 40s, his early 40s, prostate cancer, and he beat it. And, you know, just having to go back to his home whenever he was, you know, in his early 60s was a tough thing for me, you know, putting that strain on an elderly relative. But I felt like, you know, it was kind of something that had to be done at the time. So, you know, we moved in there, and the way it kind of worked was, you know, my mom was in there kind of hiding her drug use for the most part, but there was signs, but, you know, she would never kind of admit to what she was doing, as, you know, some people who do those situations, I mean, are in those situations do. They just don't ever want to admit, you know, they kind of are dealing with a problem or have a problem. So after that, she eventually found a spot and moved, and I stayed with my grandparents. My brother, the second oldest in the family, would kind of fluctuate between the two, my grandparents and my mom's house. My sister would kind of do the same thing, and my other brother, he ended up moving in with his dad, who was my stepdad at the time, or who used to be my stepdad, right? So I know this is complicated,
Yeah.
but anyway, from there, moving in there, so we were kind of all split up to an extent, and my mom was living in Cornwall at the time, and I was just hearing things about people being around the house and things being around the house, and I was finding little, tips of safety tips that would be on the tips of hypodermic needles and stuff. Like my girlfriend worked at the pharmacy at the time. She worked in the methadone clinic for a stint. Like she knew kind of what these things look like too, and so we kind of confronted her on it, and again, it was the whole thing like nothing's going on. Eventually we did get I got my brothers and sisters to come live with me at my grandparents, and my other brother stayed with my mom's ex-husband. Um, so I guess that was kind of the triggers of knowing when things got bad. My sister actually had told me that she was down to visit my mom one time, and she was basically on the couch, sitting there, just completely like out of it, drooling, talking nonsense. And she told me, and I was like, look, I don't really want you ever going back there, and we kind of had that discussion, and it was a tough discussion to have, but well, that's when I started to notice things got really bad until, things started to hit the news, ironically.
Was it tough for you to have these kind of conversations with your siblings, being
To
that
the
like kind of older brother?
Yeah, and to this day, I don't know if we've had the in-depth conversations we do need to have. I think it takes a lot of time to get there, especially I have three siblings, and I'd say I'm at different stages of having that conversation with each one of them, and
Right.
I think that's just the way it goes. Everybody kind of handles it differently and handles dealing with those things differently. I know that they've gone through different things that I've gone through, and they probably haven't even told me about it. For a long time, it was. I think they were scared to tell me. They thought they saw me as an authority figure, and they saw me as the person that would kind of always lay the law down. And if they had kind of opened up about what my mom was doing on the off hours, like maybe what she was doing with her partner at the time, that I would go over the top or something and maybe get myself into trouble or something like that, or cause a situation that would actually make things worse and not make things better.
Right.
But that's just the way I view it. I don't know how they view it sometimes, but like I guess I could respect that view and respect that opinion.
Right. Did you feel like stuck at the time being in that position where you had to be like an authoritative figure?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like I still don't feel like I had the chance to, I guess, have the proper childhood with my siblings that I could have. And it was weird too, right? Because whenever I was 18 and graduated high school, my mom had told me that the person I thought was my dad wasn't, right? So whenever I was younger, my mom's ex-husband would take some of my other siblings to do things that he wouldn't necessarily invite me to do, and it kind of caused some resentment there until I kind of understood what was going on, and my mom opened up about that and told me the truth. So I feel like there was a lot of stuff going on with my brothers and sisters. In fact, like whenever they would go do that, I found like I actually found a lot more support in some of the friends I have. Like I have some deep, deep friendships that kind of last to this day. I've kind of formed a little. I know this happens all the time. When you're dealing with things at home, but you kind of form a support group and a family of your own.
Right.
Um, and maybe that's at the expense of not having those conversations and feeling that resentment whenever I was younger. But I think, we do need to have those conversations with their family. I don't know what the best way to do that is, whether it's one-on-one or like putting that into a professional setting where you have, a psychologist or something, kind of mitigate something like that, because, it definitely is, a lot to go through. And like I said, a lot of different perspectives.
Be hard to navigate, I imagine.
Yeah, especially being connected to the situation in different ways, right? Like it might need, like a mental health professional to help deal with those and mitigate those conversations. I think that's something we all, because I think a lot of the time, people think of therapy as like a one-on-one thing or couples therapy where you're going through it within a relationship, and not necessarily a type of family therapy, or or two brothers going to therapy to try to work on their relationship. Or I don't hear a lot about that.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think that would be, I think that's very helpful. I think a lot of people could use that. A lot of people
Oh,
would need that, right?
you can't do it on your own. You probably need somebody who knows more about it, who can be removed from the situation and
Yeah.
view everybody's situation in that lens. So I
Yeah,
guess
it's
back.
so I
Go
was just
ahead.
gonna say it's kind of like a non-biased opinion where they're like you said, like when you're connected to the situation, you have like emotional connection, like, and it's always like it's this competing perspective, and you can't find the common middle ground where you can communicate how each other are feeling.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely tough. Yeah. So going on from there, I dropped out of at a UPEI because of what my mom was dealing with. So then, for a few years, I kind of just dealt with that situation. Heard things around town, saw things, and
Were you
then
still seeing her at this time?
yeah, sometimes not as much. I think stuff got so bad I kind of started to cut her out. They had put some bills in my name that had ran my credit up, that I actually had to go and deal with, things like that. So there was some schemes and stuff going on that kind of not even just that, like, I never stopped, I guess, talking to my mom because she was an addict. I started to stop talking to her because of some of the actions she was doing. Like she was, stealing from the family and, putting things in my grandfather's name or my name or things like that to gain credit in some places. So that was kind of what pushed it over the edge. That was like, I've always told her, my line to her always was, all I can do is help you. There's nothing else I can do. I can't give you money. I can't do this. I can take you out to eat, but I can't, all I can do is help you, is
And how old were
what
you
I
at
was
this
told.
time? You would have been like 19, 20,
Yeah,
21.
though. Yeah. 19, yeah, probably 19, 20 for the most part. And then I started to realize things were getting really bad because I was living at my grandparents at the time. I think this was in 2014, maybe. I was living with my grandparents at the time, and it's like 2 in the morning, and I just hear my grandmother like staggering down the steps, and she's like screaming at the top of her lungs, and I'm like, "What's going on?" Like, you know what I mean? Like, so I go out there and like greet her, and she's like, "Your uncle's on the phone." And I'm like, "What's up?" And he basically had said, someone's dead outside your mother's house, and I was like, "Holy crap!" Like, I hope it's not her. I mean, I not to be selfish, but I feel like anybody in that moment has that feeling. I hope it's not my mom. I hope it's not.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I tried to get a hold of her and I couldn't. I eventually called the Charlottetown police, and it took me a while, but I eventually got them to tell me that it wasn't her laying on the ground. They wouldn't tell me if she was involved, but they told me it wasn't my mom. It was basically bleeding out that night. So what had happened was it was I'll be careful here just because of how it worked through the courts. But it was an alleged stabbing of a man in my mom's apartment. Allegedly, they had been all doing drugs together. One thing led to another, and just a long story short, he got stabbed, and essentially, you know, allegedly was stabbed and bled out on my mom's front lawn. This went through the whole court thing, and nobody was ever kind of found guilty for the murder, or for what had happened. But it was very high profile on PEI. Like it's insane to think, I work at CBC now, and I had Steve Bruce on the lawn of my mother's house talking about the stabbing. I had another colleague, Brian Higgins at CBC, covering this in the courts. It's things I've kind of spoke to them before about, and it's just a wild scenario I kind of find myself in these days. But I feel like going through those situations and having some of those things about my family, in the news and on Compass and on the Guardian has kind of led me a little bit of compassion or perspective whenever I go to cover stories, with people in this community, and even covering your story, hearing what you went through, and then having the courage to kind of reach out to you is because of the things I've gone through, because I think these stories need to be told, because I don't think enough people talk about the things they've been through or talk about their mental health struggles. And it's hard to get that perspective in the news when people, and talk about it, and maybe lead to some change, or put them out there without people talking about it. And I feel like if I don't do that myself here with you, who am I to essentially ask you to come and chat with me about some of the things you've been through?
Yeah, man. Like, I just want to say thanks so much for reaching out and having me on. Like, that was huge. And yeah, it's just like, the more we can share it, right? I was just talking about this like on the last episode. It's like we're all just going through life, and there's like this big stigma of like, we're thinking that we're the huge thing I hear over and over, like, I'm the only one's going through this, I'm the only one's going through this, everyone else is like just fine, and I'm the only one, like, why do I feel like this, right? And
Mm-hmm.
little did they know that everybody else, like, we're all human, we all feel these things, right? So, and we all have our stories, and we all have mental health, the same as
Oh,
physical health.
I certainly don't think what I've been through on the island is unique to me. I think there's probably several people who've dealt with the same thing, but maybe have not spoken out about it or talked about it. Or, there's plenty of people who don't know this story. Like, this is the first time I'm actually telling it in a setting like this. Um, but I think, like I said, I think it's an important thing to do. I think we just need to open up more so people can, humanize, what's going on a little bit more. It's one thing to talk to, say, in my life, in my daily life, I'll talk to politicians, I'll talk to organization heads, and that's all well and good to know what's going on with mental health resources in the community. But what really needs to be done is talking to people who use these resources, who've got help from these resources, who have problems with these resources. I think that's the crutch, and that's the heart of these stories on the island, especially around mental health.
Yeah, yeah, and it just it's like, on the ground, how does it work, and is it working, and does it work good? And
Yeah,
then
yeah.
this podcast is like kind of a layer underneath that. It's like, what is your story?
Yeah, and there's been lots of people. It's gotten better. There's been people speaking out about addiction who I've interviewed and chatted with. You have good examples. Grant Matheson, the doctor from PEI, who lives here now again, and he was a doctor and an opiate addict. Like, I mean, these things can happen to anybody. Anybody can slip up and have these things happen. Like, in fact, I think in reality, my mom's drug addiction probably started with a sore tooth. Like, that's where I can pinpoint it back to whenever she started actually using opiates and started to eventually, shoot drugs. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and that's where Grant found himself in, right? He was using opiates, and I interviewed him, and he talked about how he used water from a toilet to shoot himself up in an airport bathroom.
Wow.
It's crazy how quickly it jumps, how quickly it can jump, from one thing to another.
Especially opioids. Like, it's such a common story, like the injury or the pain, some sort of pain, and then you get a prescription for 20 pills, but you only need two. And then
Yeah.
you take
Yeah.
the pill and you feel great. There's no worries. And then all of a sudden the stress goes away, and all these mental things you had going on you didn't really think about before, or maybe you did. You get relief from it, and then away you go.
I mean, to this day, just because of what my mom went through, she was very anti-drugs. Like, I don't think people would believe that. Like, whenever I've talked to people like about what she went through, people think that she was an addict her whole life, that she was an addict for 30 years using, drugs. She wasn't. This happened to her, like, from addiction to, leading to her death. That was a span of maybe 5, 6 years. That was barely, a blip on her life. Um, so,
Wow.
it's crazy how quickly it can happen. Like, I remember her always preaching to me, anti-drugs. Like she didn't even like the fact that I'd smoked marijuana whenever I was younger. She was that kind of mom. And it's things were tough, and maybe she, eventually she did drink a lot, in portions leading up to her opiate addiction, but she definitely wasn't an addict her whole life, so it can happen really fast.
Yeah. No, it really can. So kind of leading from that, you find out there's a stabbing, and there's news stories about it, and where does it kind of go from there?
So I guess right before the stabbing, a year before, there was actually my mom's home was in the news because Operation Clean Sweep. I don't know if people in Charlottetown are familiar with that, but it was a shutdown of several, alleged drug dealers in Charlottetown, people who were, selling, using high amounts of, whatever. So, my mom's house was one of those, and there was, I think, over 150 hypodermic needles found in the home.
Wow.
Like, I don't know if those were used, unused, but it was part of the news article. It was crazy. And then on top of that, you had the stabbing came out next. Then the trial being through that, like I would follow it every day. I'd check the tweets. They were tweeting the court story because this was the first stabbing on PEI, or high profile death before the kind of the Pleasant Grove situation
Yeah.
that happened. So yeah, just going through that was kind of I don't know, it was a unique experience. Like I've never I know even from being a journalist that some people maybe resent people that are covering stories about their family, or the things they're going through. And I know PEI is a small place, but I don't know. I just feel like it was a unique experience, and kind of being on that side of things, I kind of said, I can write, I can shoot video. I find these things interesting. Maybe there is something here. Maybe I should go be a journalist, and maybe I should, see if there's ways I could help tell stories like this in a compassionate way, or in a unique way, and lend my talents and my mind to that. And I think that's kind of how I started to change it into something positive. I started to
But
realize that probably these people out there doing this didn't want to cover this every day either. Like it was a depressing thing. It's a depressing topic. There was some teenagers involved that couldn't be named, things like that. The quotes from court were just, they were pretty dark. Like, there was an alleged rape, that like an attempted rape. It was. I just felt that because I had went through that, and because I had a skill set where I was writing, and things like that, that maybe I could take all this and use it for myself, and turn it into something positive. So that's whenever I started to think about going to journalism school, was kind of whenever that had happened. And it wasn't too long after that. I think this all happened. The trial happened in 2015. Um, my mom's drug addiction got worse since that happened. I don't know what was weighing on her conscience or weighing on her mind, but she was in the home when the alleged stabbing happened. So her drug addiction got worse. Then my uncle, he was actually he was a coke dealer for a long, long time before he passed. He passed, I think, in late 2015 or early 2016. And that's whenever things with my mom started to get really, really bad. I don't know if she was, injecting up until then, but then she definitely started to. Um, and because they were really close, he always kind of looked out for her and made sure, kind of nothing happened to her. When that drug bust happened at, the Operation Clean Sweep and stuff like that, my mom was like never taken into custody. And a lot of the time, I think it might have been because of the connections that my uncle could have had because of the things he was doing.
right.
Um, which is to say, I also come from a family that, not to say all my family's like that. I have other family members that are doing really great. I just want to put that out there. But,
Yeah.
I had that, I guess, criminal element and stuff in the family for a long time. And I think that also lended a little bit to my perspective. So when that happened, things got really, really worse with my mom. We didn't talk much after the stabbing, after the drug bust, because I just didn't want to be associated. I didn't want to be associated with her, the people she knew. I didn't even want her to essentially tell people I was her son at the time. Because I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my own life and my own identity. And we would talk here and there, but not as much. And my grandmother started to tell me, your mom's really, really sick, and me thinking this was finally them catching up to reality, realizing she's an addict, right? I didn't go check on her, and it's probably one of the biggest regrets I have to this day. In fact, the first year I was in journalism school after she had passed, I guess I can tell the story this way. This guy, I met up with him, and he wanted to tell me a story. And he proceeds to tell me, I lived in this place, I lived in this part, and these other people lived in this part, and they were using a lot of drugs. And there was this woman in there, and she didn't leave the house or anything like that. And EMTs were called a few times, and they didn't take her because she'd tell them, she was okay, but like I really didn't think she was. And and he said eventually, I think the police came and EMTs came and pulled her from the building, and he was like, this woman was maybe 70 pounds. Like she was, kind of a skeletal wreck by, lack of better terms. And I was sitting there having a coffee with him, and I looked at him and I said, yeah, I know all about it. That was my mom.
Wow.
And
Wow.
he was kind of like, oh, wow, like, wow. And I was like, yeah, yeah. But so with her, what had happened is, I get a call whenever I'm out eating dinner with Jess, my girlfriend at the time, from these people who were friends with my uncle, friends with my mom, and they say, your mom's being rushed to the hospital. She's not doing well at all. Like you should go. So I went in to check on her, and she's laying on the bed, and she has bed sores and everything. I don't know how long she was laying, and laying in a hospital, laying in her room, and, not going anywhere or doing anything, or what was going on. But she had injected drugs with a dirty needle. And because she had not gotten any medical attention, it led to an infection. And that infection eventually led to an infection in her heart valve. And because she let her body deteriorate to the point to where it had deteriorated, her body wasn't strong enough for any type of surgery or any type of way to save her at the time. So she was sent to Halifax, and in Halifax they tried to save her life. Like the doctors, the nurses, they did an incredible job. They were super compassionate, and they provided the best care they could. But I'm in my early 20s, and my grandfather, he has dementia, late stage dementia, and at this point, it was kind of showing how deep it was getting. And my grandmother just wasn't. She had already lost a son. She was going through kind of her own mental health issues, and she was having a hard time kind of making decisions. So I actually had to sit in a boardroom with a bunch of doctors, in my early 20s, and tell them what I thought and what percentage of chance I wanted them to not do surgery and essentially let my mom die, because the high chance of them doing surgery would essentially, cut into this heart valve, and she would suffer and bleed out and die.
Wow.
So, I made that decision, and I told them, if the chances are this low, like I don't want my mom to die like that, you know.
Was this just like, there's like a saying where you don't know how strong you are until you don't have a choice. Was this just like you didn't have a choice? You're in the early 20s. There was no other choice. You had to go in there, and um, like what was your mindset like through that whole situation?
um, I guess it was, I have to do this. And, eventually to an extent, it became, I have to get over this and get through this and finish this off and close this chapter in the story, however way it ends up to an extent. I was just tired of, what was happening and seeing my mom suffer and seeing her like that. And, she was completely delusional, like being like, I have cancer and stuff like that. And it's like, no, mom, like I know now, like I know you're an addict. Like I can see these track marks. The doctors told me what is going on. Like
Right.
I was her next of kin, like legally, because of the way things went, I was her next of kin. So I ended up knowing all these things, because she was in such a horrible state, So, it was tough, and yeah, it was kind of something where I was like, I have to do this, and at the same time, this was a time when, my to-be wife was going through a horrible time herself. She was getting sick. Like she lost 60 pounds throwing up and getting sick. And I didn't know if that it was anxiety or trauma linked to, what I was dealing with. Eventually, we realized it was her appendix and she had that taken out. But it was a point in my life where I was like, okay, like things are happening. I just have to do this. I just have to get through this. I just have to find a way to make these decisions on my own. It felt very lonely, and it felt very, at the time I felt resentful to my brothers and sisters, because they weren't in that room at that time. But at the same time, I look at it and I'm like, that was a hard thing for me to do in my early 20s. These people, some of them weren't even out of high school yet.
Yeah.
Um, I couldn't imagine putting them in that situation. Looking back, I couldn't imagine expecting them to be there.
Yeah. Right.
I
And did
mean,
did you say your girlfriend lost 60 pounds?
yeah, yeah, through like getting sick. I mean, that's probably her story to tell. You could have her on sometime. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, she lost. Yeah, she got really really sick, and she definitely had some struggles with anxiety and stuff, and thought it was that. But eventually, I mean, she had to get her appendix taken out. She had a leak, and man, that was also an intense moment. You know, just I, you know, after losing my mom, I got really scared. Like I'd just lose everybody in my life eventually, losing my
Yeah.
uncle, losing my mom. I just figured, everybody around me was going to die. And that was a unrational thought to have. But that's just how I started to think. And it started to scare me whenever
Yep.
I'd see people get sick or, see people go through a hard time. And I'd also almost want to keep a distance or, I'd act differently. And I think it strained my relationships with some people. And I'm glad I was able to save those.
Yeah, I think that's a very natural thing to happen. You just feel like you start putting up walls because you just like got hurt so badly that you can't you're timid to let someone in again or let people in general to that
Yeah.
level, you know.
Yeah. And, I've told some people this story and they've kind of asked me, how I seem to be able to be, so strong and do some of the work I do. And a lot of it comes down to resilience, but that resilience is built around some of the positive things and focusing on some of the positive things in my life and the positive people in my life. Like like I said earlier, whenever my house had burned, the community rallied behind me, but not behind me, but behind my family, and helped rebuild that. Helped raise money, helped hold charity events, sell fudge, all that island stuff, and helped
Yeah.
rebuild a home.
Yeah.
When my mom passed, she died in Halifax, and I had to call the hospital and to basically make the decision to have her cremated and have her sent back to PEI. And the fee to do that was kind of big, right? But the funeral home here in PEI, I'll never forget it. I talked to the funeral director, and I said, my mom's ashes are in Halifax. Like I thought that I didn't know how any of this worked. I thought maybe they shipped them themselves. It was free of charge. Like, whatever. I didn't know how it worked. And this woman said, my son-in-law he's over in Halifax for the weekend. He'll stop by the hospital. He'll pick up your mom's ashes, and he will bring them to PEI. And it's just little moments like that, man.
Yeah.
That's like,
Yeah.
where do I live? Wonderland? You know, like, why do these people care? You know,
Yeah.
why? Like, this is something they deal with every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a testament to the culture here. And, you know, that's such a PEI thing. Like,
Oh yeah, man. No,
I
it
got someone
really
there in
is.
Halifax, they'll pick it up for you.
Oh, and it's ashes. You know, like it's not
Yeah.
it's not milk. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, it's
Yeah.
crazy. And like I always think about that, and I always think about, you know, not even the support you can get professionally, but the support you get from the community and the people around here is really incredible. You
It's
know,
beautiful.
I actually wrote a poem about it because to deal with a lot of the stuff, came out in creative writing and poetry kind of before I got into the profession I did. And it said, I think it was the time the bridge fee was $46. So it was $46. What was it? They brought her home in a luxury sedan, $46 for ash to touch sand. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. It's beautiful. So
Yeah.
you did a lot of writing.
Yeah, I did a lot of
After.
writing, a lot of poetry. You know, actually, whenever I went to journalism school, I ended up going to Halifax for my first internship with the Star, and it was something that was crazy, right? Because my mom died in the summer right before I had went back to school, and we actually buried her on Canada Day, which is weird. Like I, you know,
Yeah.
but so I went back to school like that year, and it was almost, you know, getting to be a year anniversary to when she had passed, and I was in Halifax, and it was probably the most therapeutic experience ever. Like I was terrified to go there, but whenever you have somebody that, you know, dies in a place, that kind of is the memory for you, right?
Yeah.
But I went back and I did some journalism. I did some, you know, some really deep creative writing over there, kind of alone. In my uncle had a little basement spot where I kind of had my own separate entrance and everything. And I just kind of spent time for the first time, I think, processing what I had been going through,
Right.
and even thinking about my girlfriend at the time and how she had been beside me and supported me, and you know, I guess made me the person I am. Like, in all honesty, I'm not sure how I would have taken some of the trauma I faced and turned it positively if I didn't have somebody who actually made me feel like I could be loved. You know, some of the relationships with my mom and other people, I guess I didn't necessarily feel that a lot. You know, and I know that seems like a lot of pressure to put on one person, but she's always kind of been that person for me, and has always supported every decision I made. Made me feel like, you know, anything I went through was never a burden. And I know sometimes, you know, whenever you go through things like that, you can feel like, you know, this is a problem, this is a weight. I don't want to unload it on anybody else. Like, they don't need that.
Right.
But yeah, no, like I think that's another thing I'd like to highlight is just the importance of having a support group. You know, even outside your family, like having friends, having, you know, um, just people you can, you know, I mean, even if things didn't, you know, go well with my girlfriend, I think we'd still be together to an extent. You know, she'd still be looking out for me. She just wouldn't let anything bad happen to me. And I think we need people like that in our lives. You know, I have best friends who, you know, who've just done incredible things for me. Like the people that showed up to my mom's funeral was a very small service, and each and every one of them, you know, I remember. And every person that called me, every person that, you know, reached out, and like I said, I think we live in a special place to an extent. And, you know, not to say I haven't gotten professional help. It's just Never been a thing that that necessarily worked for me. But I think a lot of people should look into some of their options at their employers. Some employers and PEI have some really good mental health programs where you can talk to, like, some professionals for a certain duration. Even schools. When I went to Holland College, there's online services. There's people you can talk to in person, or there was. I don't know what COVID's done to that. Um, but and I did try it, but it got to an extent where I told a therapist almost, well, probably a little bit more than what I've told you. But I remember one day at the end of it, it was at the end of one of my sessions, they looked at me and said, I don't know how you're okay. And
Yeah.
which blew my mind, because that's why I was there. you know
Yeah.
on top of what happened to my mom, what actually had sent me to therapy was in 2016, right before going back to school, right before my mom actually no, this was yeah, right before this all happened. I think I was driving home to pick up Jess from lunch, or drive her to work, and I'm driving along the highway, and this sports bike just buzzes by me. And I'm like, oh, geez, like, that was pretty quick. At the time, I was actually working at a shop. We did a lot of bike stuff. So the guy just buzzes by me. It's on the bypass leading up to the KFC, where the new intersection's now built, that for ever active transport, I guess. So going up there, he had hit the curb and launched himself off the bike. He had a passenger on the back. And as I turned the curb, I see just him laying motionless on the ground. The bike's fired up near the intersection. It's revving, like the engine's still going. And this woman is on the ground trying to, like, get her footing and stand up. So I run up to him, and, the first thing I do is kind of check his pulse. I probably didn't have to. He was dead on impact. And then I ran and shut his motorcycle off because I didn't want, a fire or anything to happen. And this other guy on a motorcycle actually stopped and helped me. I don't know who the hell he is to this day. And we covered this guy in a jacket and my sweater. And then I kind of stayed with this woman until the ambulance arrived. And then I went home and, told Jess what had happened. To an extent, maybe I was in shock. I don't even think I, like, even, registered this, like, which is crazy. She says I was, like, looking sick and stuff. But, anyway, I drove her to work, and then I went back to work for the day, finished off work. And I was like, I don't think normal people should be able to do that. Should be able to watch someone die and then be like, that was messed up. I think I should go back to work now.
Well, that was a bit weird. I'm gonna go back
Right,
to
right. So from
that was
then it was
wild.
kind of like, hey, you should probably go check this stuff out. So that's kind of what sent me to therapy, and kind of led to those discussions. But yeah, like I said, you definitely should use those sports. They might not work for everybody, or maybe I've used the resource since then. Um, but yeah, like, I just think everybody kind of goes through lots of stuff, and I think eventually it can pile up. And I thought that was a weird way of, I guess, recognizing that, because everybody assumes, whenever you have a mental health struggle, like, and the thing with me is necessarily, I was never diagnosed with depression. I was never diagnosed with anxiety. I don't have a clinical diagnosis for anything. In fact, going through therapy, a lot of it is like, well, you probably get sad or, depressed sometimes because your mom died, and you watch the person die. Like, these aren't, there's reasons kind of behind the ways I feel all the time, not all the time, but the ways I feel sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just think people need to talk about what they're going through. Because, like I said, even without a diagnosis, I was facing things, and maybe it didn't come out as me, breaking down, crying like you see sometimes in the movies or whatever. It was actually a non-response to a trauma that was like, that's not okay. Like, that is a weird response to something so traumatic.
Would you say it was almost like a numbness?
Yeah, and I think maybe I was numb for a while without realizing it, and a moment like that really put it into into perspective, right? Really, it might have brought me back down to reality to be like, wow, because of what you're going through with your mom, because of other stuff that you're not even feeling this, you
Yeah.
know.
So that was before your mom died or after your mom died?
I think that was, I get honestly, you know how trauma can mess you up chronologically?
Yeah. Yeah.
No idea, no idea. I think it was either just before or just after. It was in October of
Okay.
one of those years, so it was fall. Um, I think it was just before she passed, actually. But I mean,
Okay.
prior to that, going through like this was after the whole stabbing situation and all those other things, right?
Yeah.
So between then and my mom's passing.
So what has the grieving process looked like those years after leading into today?
I did a weird thing where so I was so determined to turn what situation I had faced into positivity that I put off processing it. So what I did was became a complete workaholic to an extent. So I went to school and I applied myself, and just that's all I cared about for a while, and focused on distracting myself and doing that. And even probably not until my second year, even in my second year, I was going through this stuff and I asked my girlfriend to marry me. So I was going to school, just dealing with maybe around the first anniversary of my mom's death, um and getting married and having my whole family in my wedding party. And I mean, I love my wedding. My wedding was amazing, but at the same time, like, maybe it would have been a little bit easier on people if I wasn't dealing with what I was dealing with at the time. But I just got to the point where I was like, okay, I need to just get this going, need to get this done, and need to start forming what I think a happy life looks like, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't think I really started dealing with the grief until I finished my second year of journalism school and started to work in the industry. You know, um, yeah, and I guess the grieving process now is, I think about it a lot. I think about it on her birthday. I think about it. So just sometimes it randomly hits me. I just think about, how my mom's dead and how, she'll never see me on Compass, or she never got to see me get married. And she was only 43, you know,
Wow.
it sucks. Yeah. So,
So
I mean,
young.
yeah, and I still go through it every day, every other day. I think about it. But I think I've tried to think about some of the positive aspects, because I think whenever you have somebody that passes, maybe that way, the last couple of years of their lives were kind of chaotic. You have a problem where you freeze that in time, you know.
Yeah.
But I think about my mom. Like I said, she was not an addict her whole life. Um,
Yeah.
you know, um, so I think about the good things too. I think about how she was amazingly talented. She was one of the best singers I've heard on the island. And I don't say that just because she was my mom. But I think this kind of leads into why I do what I do. I wrote for years and years and years, right? So my mom, she sang for years, and she did go to karaoke and stuff like that. But she actually had people being like, "Hey, um, I think you should sing with this. I have this recording studio." People were actually like, you're talented, you're good, you should come do that and try that. And she never had the confidence in herself to do that. She never believed in herself to do that. So in a way, I feel like seeing, like, that, and seeing her kind of hide that talent, has, because for years I wrote and people said, you need to do something with this, you need to make a career out of this, you need to do that. I feel like she and I both lacked confidence in the same ways.
Right.
um so I do think of some of the, but I take that positively, right? I say, mom, I'm not gonna be like that. I'm gonna show people, who I am, like you should have. Like, she really could have. I really think she could have done great things. She, didn't go to college or university or anything like that. I'm not saying everybody has to, or anything like that, but she could have, but she never viewed herself as like an intelligent person, but she could rattle off all the answers on Jeopardy or any trivia quiz show, that would come on TV. So I feel like looking at that and the way she dealt with stuff has kind of made me be like, okay, I want to do the opposite,
Right.
and not let anxieties affect me in the same way. Another thing she did was, and I actually used to get honor for this, right? Like she'd wake up some days before she was dealing with her addiction issues, and she wouldn't have anything planned. She wouldn't go anywhere for the day. She wouldn't be going to do anything, but she'd get up and she'd put jeans on and she'd do her makeup and she'd do her hair. And whether she was cleaning the house or whatever, she'd put some music on, she'd and I'd be like, why are you doing this? Like, you're not going anywhere. You're not expecting anybody over. And then I kind of realized whenever I've been dealing with sadness or dealing with bouts of, any type of depression, what makes me feel better is the things that she did, like getting up, putting my clothes on, going for a walk, um,
Yep.
just trying to exist a little. I feel like sometimes, sometimes laying in bed all day, sleeping, letting your body relax can be a good thing. But just for me and stuff, looking at the way my mom handled it, for a very long time successfully, um, I try to focus on some of those positive things whenever I'm grieving. I try to say,
Yep.
how would she deal with this in a positive way? What would she want me to do? Because at the end of the day, I remember one of the last things my mom ever told me was that she was proud of me. The fact that I was trying to go to school and trying to do these things. I think that might have been like one of the last sober conversations I had with her, because this was prior to me dropping out of UPEI and stuff. But no, like even to this day, grief hits me and stuff. Like another important thing is use your vacation days, whether you're using those for a vacation or using those to, mindfully relax. I know a lot of people can't go anywhere anyway these days. So I think you should just take time for yourself and do the things you enjoy. I always try to find time to, whenever poetry readings were a thing, to go out and do that and try to get
Right.
this out of my system in that way, or creatively, or find hobbies that I like. Another thing is I found myself obsessed with productivity after my mom died, and I realized that wasn't healthy. Like I felt like everything I did, I had to be productive and I had to be creating something. I think if
Right.
you like to play Call of Duty for a couple of hours on a Wednesday evening, do it. To get out of this whole thing we're dealing with. Like I think anything you can do as a hobby, anything that takes you out of the reality you're facing all the time is a good thing, and you should do that, whether that's Brazilian jiu-jitsu or drawing. It's
Yeah.
everybody should find some type of hobby, and you don't even need to be good at it. Paint something. I painted rocks one day, man. It was one of the most therapeutic things I've done. I painted rocks. I did a Ninja Turtle and I hit it, right? And then you see like a kid pick it up and be like, look at that, a Donatello. Like, it's
Yeah. Yeah.
just have some fun. Like taking my dog for a walk has been amazing. Having something in my life that I feel like I'm a little bit responsible for has worked wonders for me too. Like you can't sit here all day if the dog needs to go pee. You can't
Yeah.
just sit here and be
Yeah.
sad if the dog needs to go for a walk. Or he's
Yeah.
gonna get sad too. You don't want that.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know? So
100%.
I feel like that's and that's just kind of how I dealt with it, and I've been a little bit resilient about it. Like I said, I'm not perfect. I still deal with it all the time. Like I said, when March comes around, it's my mom's birthday. It's a tough day. When Canada Day comes around, it's a tough day. That's the day we buried her. It's I think what people need to realize is grief is going to be, for me personally, grief is going to be an ongoing process. Like
Yeah.
even talking about some people, I've really been involved with talking to people who have been through drug addiction after my mom and what she has been through. And a lot of people who are recovering, who are going through years and years of recovery, still saying, once you're an addict, you're kind of always an addict to an extent, or you have to have that mindset to keep yourself, kind of,
Check.
I guess, sure, for but I think that's kind of the same thing with grief. Once you're grieving, you might grieve the rest of your life. It kind of depends on what that person meant to you, and it's how you adapt to that grief and how you use it maybe in positive lights. And you know
I think, um, like from my experience, people I've talked to, like it's kind of like it's kind of like a hole in your heart. You know, you lose a connection, you lose love, and the void or the hole or the gap is never going to be filled again. But you're going to it, but it becomes easier to have that there, and then you learn to live around it and find, you know, new love and live your life again. But the, you know, the hole in your heart never goes away. It just gets easier to live with. You learn to live again with that hole.
I Yeah, and some of the people I've talked to just in my profession have really put things in perspective for me. Like, I don't think pain has to be like, I mean, pain can kind of be a beautiful thing to an extent if you share it,
Yeah.
and you let other people know, like, this is what I'm going through. I talked to a woman once who was had terminal cancer, whenever I was working for the Guardian. And it wasn't a story necessarily about terminal cancer. It was a story about healthcare, and just how sometimes she was driving from, one end of the island to the other to get, chemotherapy or the treatment she needed, while dealing with like late stage cancer.
Yeah.
But just hearing what she was going through and dealing with, and I guess what I've been through kind of offered me a little bit of perspective to, like, just being around, seeing people who were sick, or who had, died with, even my grandfather's cancer, or some of my relatives, or you know um some of the other stuff I've necessarily seen. Just talking to her and hearing, just her perspective on life while she was dying. I mean, she eventually did pass. I think those experiences and those things, a lot of people want to avoid, maybe, listening to those stories or hearing those stories. But they're really important stories. I mean, we're all
Yeah.
heading to deal with things like this someday. And just hearing the way, cancer was affecting her mental health, and treatment was affecting her mental health, and sitting there for an hour watching her, cry and pour her heart out. I think it kind of lends, what I've been through and what I've seen has lent me the ability to, be compassionate, and but at the same time still be able to logically sit there and process what she's trying to tell me and get that story out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like,
And sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. That was it.
I was just going to say that's the whole reason why I'm able to do this and I started this in the first place. And I've said that many times, but it's just, without going through the things I went through, I never would have the ability to do this and be able to have these conversations and just what you just said. But I think like those stories, like you're saying, are very important. And even like the coming to terms with death, you know, like I think we should be, you don't have to think about it every day, but it's good. It's a good thing to hear
And talk about, right?
and talk about.
Like,
Yeah.
I think if we don't talk about it, even the way you opened up with your story about me, I mean, with me talking about grief and dealing with it, I think we kind of find ourselves in the same situation. You had this drive to be like, okay, I need to take this and turn it into something positive. You couldn't let the loss you went through be something that was negative in your life and affected you for the rest of your life, and was something that completely destroyed you, like.
Yeah.
And I find the same thing in myself. Like, I just um can't let my mom down to an extent. Like, I can't follow the
Yeah.
same path, and I know she didn't want to follow that path, or I like to think that. And I just want more people to talk about the stuff they've went through. I think that what you've done here is a great thing, having people, because like I said, it is it's hard to talk to the news. It's hard to talk to me about some of the stuff you've gone through. That's why I commend you for doing it when you did it. Having a camera in your face is a lot different than me sitting in my living room comfortable, with my crooked mural in the back, it looks like, talking about life. It's not quite the same. It feels a little bit more rehearsed, I guess. But just I don't know. I want people to know that I think it's important to get these things, for lack of a better term, into the mainstream, and get these topics into the mainstream. Um, you know, because everybody, struggles with mental health. I tell people this all the time. Everybody's mother dies.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a unique thing to me. It's not something that I think I should let completely take over my life, because it's gonna, unfortunately, that's reality of life and death. It happens to a lot of the people we love. Well, it happens to all the people we love.
Yeah.
um and I think, in a way, you have to keep that perspective, and you have to think about the good things, remember the bad things. Let grief hit you when it hits you. Like I said, it's good to have hobbies, and it's good to do stuff, but you can't completely distract yourself into one thing, because like me, it might all hit you at once.
Yeah.
Especially, when COVID hit off, this was a very tough thing for me.
Yeah.
I,
I
I feel
imagine.
like I
Very
feel like
busy.
that was one of the hardest. Yeah, sure, it was busy at work, but at the same time, I think when it hit, like, it just kind of, I was stuck at home, and I wasn't doing as much of the things as I was doing. Even at work, I was interviewing people like this over Skype,
Yeah.
and Zoom, and I wasn't, it's just the product of the way the world was. I wasn't allowed to go out and be face to face with people, and feel like I could reach out and touch somebody the way I was before. So it wasn't necessarily, none of this is what anybody signed up for to an extent, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
So I feel like whenever I was going through that and I had a lot more downtime, that was whenever I was like, oh wow, like, I didn't think about this.
Yeah.
And I started to talk to my wife about it, and our relationship got a lot better. At the time, we were living with my brother, and there was a strain in our relationship, because I was using kind of what I went through as a crutch, and having my stepdad's house as a crutch, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm married and I'm living with my little brother. I think it's time for me to get out and focus on myself. So, I moved downtown, and I just started to kind of create a space for myself, create, hobbies for myself, get things for myself. Like, I was always a person that felt I never deserved anything. Like, my wife was always the person that was like, "Hey, Tony, you should buy a new pair of boots. There's holes in yours."
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what that's about, but I just wasn't taking care of myself to the same extent I am now. I'm trying to go to a gym much more. I'm trying to, you know because I don't feel people realize, like, grief can build up and up and up in you unless you're getting it out some way, whether that's physically, creatively, emotionally. Even doing this is therapeutic to an extent. Like I said, this is the first time I've kind of formulated my thoughts. In fact, I don't even know if this will be the best interview you ever did. I'm kind of all over the place, but
No, it's fine, man. It's fine. It's what it's about, It's just sharing your story as it comes, right?
yeah.
I think that's the best way for people can relate to it.
Yeah, and I mean, I'd love to dive in a little bit more, but just some of the legality around some of this stuff is, I have to be careful. I have
Yeah.
to use words like alleged.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
but like I said, like, I think, the crazy thing is being in the news and having myself be at the forefront of the news before, and doing this now. I think hopefully this makes people realize, I'm not just out to do stories on assignment either, right? Like, being a journalist, I'm bringing a perspective of, I care about these interviews I do, and I care about things that are going on in the community. And the worst thing that I deal with sometimes is I'll have people reach out to me about mental health on PEI, or housing issues on PEI, and they'll talk to me and they'll say, "I want to keep this off the record. I don't want my name out there." And sometimes that's just not how it works. I need a face, I need a person to put through it. Um,
Right.
but so maybe showing this vulnerability allows other people to show a little bit of their vulnerability. vulnerability. Like I know it's a small place. I know once you tell your story, everybody around here probably knows it. But I just, I mean,
Yeah,
what even made you want to talk to me whenever you were because whenever I went to interview you, it wasn't just about this podcast. It was about, losing somebody you loved.
yeah. My thing was like just what you're saying, like to be vulnerable. And I think about this a lot about, the people I have on and how they share. Like we just I hate the fact that people are scared to share their name, And I hate the
Mhm.
fact that they're we're scared to say it feels to me like we're scared to say what everyone's thinking. To be completely honest, like, and I understand, like, if I didn't go through what I went through, I never would have shared any of this. We wouldn't be having this conversation. Like none of this ever would have happened. This is episode 51. But I just think like the more we just say it, because it takes so much power out of it when you say it, and then it's out there, and you are who you are. And I think what we really fear is like rejection or people leaving us or whatever the fear, deep seated fear is. And it's like those people aren't going to leave you because you're honest, And it's like we all have the story. Anyone who's um, saying something negative about your story, they're just trying to deal with their story in a way by pushing it down. Like it's just that's just how I just see it, like in that way. And that's
Mhm.
why I wanted to share that's why I did this. Wanted to share my story. Why I wanted to do the interview with you and continue to have people on. It's just honesty. Just be
Yeah.
honest about it, and we'll all feel better after because we're all pretending that. In my eyes, like we're all pretending that we don't feel it, and I
Oh,
understand it. It's
absolutely.
like it's ego. It's programming. It's societal programming. It's whatever it is. It's whatever. However, this society got to where it is now, or whatever it is. But that's just how I see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It's I just like I said, I just wish everybody would tell their story about whatever. I think everybody has a story, a traumatic story or a mental health story or something they've been through. And I just want to see people talk about it more. And I think you've done a great job. I think many people in the community are doing a great job. But I also want to hear those positive stories. I want to hear about how
Yeah,
people came out on the other side of it, how what they're doing now to deal with those things. It's not
yeah.
just about this happened to me. Sometimes it's this happened to me and this is how it affects me now. I don't think we talk about the after effect enough. You know.
And that's the whole thing with this too. I try to and for anyone listening, like if you want to come on, feel free to reach out. But I try to have guests on that have been through it. Like for you to come on, for example, your first year of journalism, I don't know that you would have the perspective to be able to do it, if you understand what I mean. So
Yeah.
I try to have people after, and then the number one question I ask, and you already answered it, is like, what do you do on a daily basis to maintain your mental health? Because that's really what it comes down to. It's like we all went through something, we all will, and then what are the tools, and it all seems to come back to the same thing, where it's like community, connection, receiving help, um, hobbies, love, the whole thing. It's like, and it goes into like the wellness and the health, which I'm also very interested in. But it's I think that's super important, and that's just the message I just want to keep getting out there is, and everybody's different, everybody has their own unique way of dealing with things, and coming to uh, coming to a good place. And the more we can share that, I think that's what's going to help others.
Yeah, I think you find a lot more common ground once people start telling all this and start realizing, some lives aren't all that different.
Yeah,
Like I said, I don't think my story's unique. But I don't think enough. I've known people who have gone through similar things, but have not spoken out about it, and teach their own. But I think the more people speak out about it, it's only the better it'll become. You know.
mm-hmm.
a lot of people want to maybe especially right now during COVID, people kind of view PEI as, a safe haven to an extent, but things go on here, things happen here that sometimes don't make the news and sometimes don't get out there because a lot of people are worried about their self-image. And I mean, I can understand that. Like I said, this is the first time I've done an interview since my mom has passed, and it's been, I don't know, years, you know?
I think it's a very personal thing. And I think I have a tremendous amount of respect for anybody that comes on here, um, because I did my story. I think it was episode 9 or 10, and it was just like you think you could tell your story, but when you actually sit down and like tell it start to finish, and you have to like you're going back, and these aren't like pleasant memories, and there's trauma there, and you got to like organize it, and then it's not easy to do it all, and then you're going to put it on the internet too, right? So it's out there. So I respect anybody that does it, and I also don't think like it's not for everyone to share. You don't have to share everything with everybody. I just think that like the main message is like to share it, whether that's like with a loved one or with help, but like don't keep it in,
No,
because
but
that's when it goes awry.
and the other thing is you can become obsessed with your worry to an extent, right? Like I was coming out of journalism school, and I got a job at the Guardian, an internship at the Guardian. I got a job at CBC, and sometimes I would think, okay, maybe people are doing this for me because they have pity on me. Maybe they know what I went through, and they're
Yeah.
like, oh God, this is the kid whose mother died. Like we should throw him a bone.
Yeah.
And that's always been something that's terrified me. Then I go on and realize that nobody's knows any of this stuff, and then you feel
Yeah.
silly and you feel ridiculous, and because like you just put an onus on that vacuum you've been living in,
Yeah.
and thinking like, oh, okay, the pity party has started, but it's not like that a lot of the time, because I think a lot of people who've been through things can say, people only care about this because of the story I have, or the backstory I have, or the things I have to tell because of the backstory. And I think I disagree with that. I think people need to recognize their talents and stuff, and what happened to them is just something they can use to put into those talents, or yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you get so wrapped up in it that you can't see anything else, right? You think that everyone knows, and you're just so that's where you are all the time. You think that
Yeah.
everyone knows that's where, but like in reality, it's just like here's Tony, just a he's a cool dude, you
Right.
know?
Yeah, that's just it. Right. And, it was kind of weird for me because to an extent, I never really cared what anybody thought about me. But after my mom died, I was like, oh God, now everybody thinks I'm a kid whose mom died,
Yeah,
So I tried to do things to make myself like change the narrative a little bit. Like even in Holland College, my instructors were some of the coolest people. Like they believed in me and they supported me and all the things I did, helped me land, job opportunities, things like that. But even going through there, it was like there was a contest to win a car, and it's like I needed to win that car because I needed to do something different to change what I went through. Somebody else, so they have something else to talk about. You know what I mean?
yeah, 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 yeah,
Which was insane because nobody was talking about anything, right?
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
but like that's another thing is I guess like just a segue onto that is another thing I really used is the power of positivity. I would have a lot of negative thoughts and think about my mom like every other day, for a long time there. But then I would get up and just the power of saying, today's going to be a good day, whether it's going to be a good day or not. Putting it out into the universe, saying positive things versus like it even comes to like driving you in the street in Charlottetown and being like, I'm not going to get a goddamn parking spot. Like, as soon as you speak it, sometimes I feel like it becomes
yeah,
a reality and it becomes a frustration. So I
yeah,
try to say, I'll get here on time. And it's just, I know that sounds ridiculous probably, but it's just these little things in my life that keep me motivated and keep me like, moving forward, like,
yeah.
just anything like that. And I think doing more of that and switching it around really helps, like just getting out of bed, even if you feel like crap today, you could even say, It's a beautiful day out. I should get some fresh air.
Yeah.
Find something you can start your day with positively versus negatively. For a very long time, I would wake up and just start with negative thoughts because of what I was dealing with.
Yeah.
But I think like I said, not speaking those negative things, and even like the power of positivity, like with this car at home college. An example is I didn't like I came home one day and I sat a pamphlet down in front of Jess and I said, I'm gonna win that this year. And she was like, yeah, okay. And in 6 months I had that car in my driveway.
So,
Right.
so what was it? What was it, like a competition?
Yeah, so it's like earn a car, right? So it takes like the top people in, like, well, not necessarily, it's not necessarily big based on marks, it's based on like how hard you work and like work initiative and like applying yourself in class. So it was across all of Ballin College, and eventually I got narrowed down from the journalism program, and went there with 6 other people, and they basically said, why do you want this car, what will it do for you? And to be honest with you, I had no money for next year's tuition. I went to school because I was like, I just need to do something. My uncle actually helped me pay my first year's tuition. Um, and it was like, all the eggs in one basket. I went through a government program to help subsidize and pay for some of it. So if I didn't win that car, I probably would have never graduated journalism school. I probably wouldn't be working where I'm working and doing the things I'm doing. I would have never got married. It's
Wow.
just, but I told myself, give yourself a goal and think positively about it. And it's amazing the things you can do, the ambition you can create within yourself.
Wow. That's amazing, man.
Yeah,
That's
like even to an extent, this is another wild thing. I never thought I'd work at CBC. I thought I would work at the Guardian or some newspaper, or go to New Brunswick and work for the Irvings of Brunswick News, something like that. That looked like where it was heading. I was driving by CBC and it was getting renovations for the longest time. And I would look at Jess every single day and I'd say, don't worry, babe, they just put my office in every single day. And they had an opening for somebody to do Storm Center. And what it was essentially you're dealing with all the cancellations. You're getting all the calls for, churches closed on Sunday, stuff like that. I was never supposed to be a writer or reporter or anything like that. But as soon as I got in that door and the confidence I had, and because I feel like it's because I told myself every day, like, my office is going to be in this building, I got more opportunities. I'm a video journalist. I'm doing stuff on TV. I'm doing stuff on radio. And I think it's because of that positivity and that outlook I had to say, you're going to do this. You're going to be there. You're going to, you know, and half of it's showing up. Just even saying you're going to be there. Who cares what you do when you get through the door? As long as you get there, it's half the
right.
battle.
Showing up
Yep.
and hard work, I imagine it sounds like
Oh, yeah.
starting from like putting in all that work to get the car and going right into CBC.
Yeah, and that was kind of part of not dealing with the grieving process was, and now I'm getting better at that, right? But like I said, I think that helped me a lot too. Like, it was a catch-22. It was the fact that I would wake up and have goals that I was leaning towards. But at the same time, what's scary is when you start knocking off those goals and you have no other ones.
Yeah.
Working at CBC was a 10-year plan for me, right? Like, I was like, I'll get in the industry. Maybe CBC will notice me. Maybe I'll, end up being on As It Happens in the National one day, but I didn't think it was going to happen right out of school in the first couple of years. And when that happened, I think that's whenever I started to deal with more of the grieving process and started to be like, okay, I have to use certain mechanisms to deal with this because I had no other goal. I was there, right? Like, I mean, right now I'm not hired full time. I'm a casual employee, but I mean, hopefully it gets there sometime.
Yeah.
Um, it will get there sometime. Like, see, that's the things
Yeah.
those are the
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
subtle things you have to say and do and put out into the
Yeah.
universe. I feel, and that's the other thing is I'm not a religious guy. I'm not a spiritual guy. But to an extent, I think we all need to have things we believe in. things that motivate us, things that like I'm not a big horoscope dude, man, but if you wake up and your horoscope is what makes you feel meaningful, all the power to you.
Do you feel like after after the death, did you feel more of these kind of feelings where you had to be positive, or kind of a feeling of, they say like they're with you now, or just this kind of feeling? Like, did you have any of those kind of feelings?
Um, the with your now kind of feeling. That's a tough question for me to answer because I don't know. I don't know what I believe in. I don't know, um, in that type of thing. But weird thing is like sometimes in some symbolism you just can't. Um, you want to grab on to some meaning there, and whether it actually means anything, I don't think it matters. Like my mom used to sing the song Black Velvet. Like that was her tune. That was the song she sang. She sang it so great, and I think it was right after her. Yeah, it was right after her funeral on Canada Day. I was driving home and I turned on the radio, and a song was just finishing, and the first song I played was that one.
Yeah.
And it's like, sometimes you're just like, thanks, universe. Like,
Yeah.
thanks for giving me one today. A
Yeah.
positive memory.
Yeah.
So I mean, like to that extent, yeah, I feel like they're with you too. I think it's important to think that I don't know, in some way, shape, or form, maybe things carry on.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a lot of the experience like that, and it's almost like, you know call it the universe, you can call it coincidence, you can call it just, doesn't really matter at the end of the day, but it does matter at the time to you, because it helps. It helps you, you know
I never saw it like this is another example. Like, and I know maybe you look for meaning in things that don't have meaning. Correlation and causality and all that stuff. But one time I was at my grandparents, and this was after my mom had passed, and a fox just came out of the woods while I was outside having a smoke, and I'd never seen a fox at my grandparents before, and it stood like maybe like 5 feet away from me and just stared for like a good minute and a half, and then just walked on.
yeah. Yeah.
It's just like, why? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, it makes you think, just like all the times that those things can happen. um I've had a lot of experiences the same thing with like music, and uh yeah, just things that like, especially at the time and the mindset you're in, you're like, how could that possibly just be coincidence? you know
Yeah,
and people might hear that and be like, it is, and I can understand that point of it too, like it is just coincidence. Like, they could
sure.
hear that story and just be like, yeah, it's just a fox, and like you get that, but it's like, it's impossible for you to understand unless you went through it, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
You know what I
And
mean?
like I said, maybe we do look for meaning in stuff that doesn't have it. But at the same time, I think that was a cool moment. I think about it all the time.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was,
Your
I don't
mom
know if
saying
that was a
hello.
sign or my mom saying hello or whatever, but I think maybe, regardless, those moments, you should cherish those small moments anyway. If a song comes on that reminds you, God, you should love that. Or, a fox comes out of the woods, or you snap get a perfect moment like that. Maybe it's not even, a significant other or a spirit or somebody you lost. Maybe it's just the world as a whole, or the universe just being like, hey, it's still beautiful here.
Yeah. Yes. And I think that was like a perspective for me that it changed, was like it kind of changed, like it changes your perspective on life, from the death perspective, like everyone's gonna die, and all that stuff, and kind of what you said earlier, and then you start thinking about like other people, hoping they don't die and everything. But it also just changes your perspective on like how beautiful it is while you're here, you know
Like I mean, I'll even tell you, like, I don't even think until I started processing this, I was loving my wife properly. Like now it's like, if I get a kiss on the cheek, like you have no idea how good that feels. Like it's just the love she gives me is like, wow, despite what I've been through, despite what I feel, and it's not just her, it's friends that go to leave my house or I go to leave their house and they say, I love you every single time, it's about that sometimes. And it's about putting it out there and, letting people know they're loved. You know, I think that's important. And I think, like I said, a support group's important. Having friends, having, maybe significant others who just make you want to be a good person, make you want to get up and try to contribute to this society because you look around. It's like, hey, look at all these great people who are who are part of it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the people you love, right? Like the family and friends are like family, like
Yeah.
just the people you love.
And it's weird, I think, going through trauma, like I can sit here and talk to you about my mom dying, about her being 70 pounds, about a dirty needle, about drug addiction and my own mental health. But as soon as I start talking about the people I love, my eyes tear up.
Yeah.
It's a weird thing for me. And it just makes you want to be like, hey, this it baffles me that like what I've been through sometimes that other people go through the same thing, and it's such a I don't know, it's just so many good people that care about other people more than they care about themselves.
Yeah. For sure, man. Yeah. And that's a good perspective to have. I think sometimes we get lost in like meaningless shit,
Oh yeah, yeah.
politics and whatever, and we kind of forget like, we all, it goes back to mental health. We all have mental health. We all love each other. We all have the same feelings.
Well,
We all have.
we're all just people doing our thing. It's just
Yeah.
that's what it is, and it gets really really messy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It can for sure.
Yeah.
Um. Well, I think this seems like a good place to own it. End it, Tony. I want to say
Sounds
thanks so
good.
much for coming on and sharing, man.
Hey man, thanks for having me.
And
Thanks for
thanks
giving me
for
the opportunity to do this.
yeah. No, it was really good to have you on. I want to thank you again for having me on CBC
Oh,
around a
of
year ago.
course, of course. No, it's
But
always good to see what's going on in the community, and that's another shout out I should give. Just let me wipe these tears out of my eyes. 1 second. I'm a professional.
yeah.
So like that's kind of coming on here too, right? Is the fact that maybe some more people feel like opening up about their story. I don't care if that's them telling you their story, telling me their story. Feel free to reach out anytime. I've got an email address. It's Anthony Davis 1902@gmail.com. That's my personal email address. Whether you want to reach out, talk about some of the things that you've been through, some of the mental health struggles, I'm always down to try to tell those stories, and I hope to.
That's awesome, man. That's really
Yeah.
awesome. Definitely reach out. I'll plug your email in the description.
Thanks.
And before you go, I'm going to send you a box of salts, cooking salts. That is from the Prince Edward Island Sea Salt Company, our sponsor. So 40% of proceeds go directly to mental health programming here in PEI. So I'll send you a box of those.
I like to cook. I like to use salt. I don't have any in the house right now,
Oh,
believe it or
listen,
not.
listen, I got a box coming your way. 4 different
That's
kinds of salt.
see, this is what I'm talking about. PEI, you've got good neighbors. And where else in PEI does somebody, I mean, where else in the world does somebody still go to their neighbor and say, hey, man, here's some salt, a
Yeah.
cup of salt,
Yeah.
a cup of sugar maybe, but, we'll do it with salt.
Cup of salt. I got
Hey,
you, boy. I
I'm
got you.
going to,
Box coming your way, sir.
imagine if I just fire it out on the step just to take care of the ice. Thanks, man. The solid. Thank you. It's like just this fine, great, cooking salt. It's like, hey,
little
not gonna
shakers.
slip.
I got you, boy. All right, Tony, this was awesome, man. Thanks so much for sharing.
Man. No problem. Have a good one.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.